the CCTLD, that he feels involved and mainstream in the CCTLD. Is that a challenge that Jenny is really ready, and for which Jenny is working hard to meet? Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Please turn off the... Thank you. That was a presentation on .bj, which has a new operator, Genesis. Let me say that we are here to learn from each other, and we are also here to do business, most importantly. I just remembered a saying that I heard from a friend from France recently in a meeting, that to wage war, you first of all need money. Second, you need money. And third, you also need money. Okay? It is associated to someone, Prince Montesquieu. I don't know if there is one of the panelists that can say it in French, because it came out nicely in French. So we are here to discuss business, we are here to discuss money, and I think without further ado, I just want to turn to our panelists. During the opening remarks, or rather during the keynote address, our speaker, Mr. Victor CiZA, mentioned the fact that most of our registries are still small, and they actually cannot be able to facilitate this kind of meeting or support a number of things that we are trying to do. I want to turn to my first intervener, Alex, with a question. Are we doing enough to grow our registries? And if the answer is no, what is it that we are not doing well? And what do we need to do so that we can be able to grow our registries?
Très bonne question. Je pense que je vais répondre en français.
Very good question. I'm going to answer in French. The question is, we developing solutions for the registrars to grow, or what is the challenge? Maybe I'll say a little bit what Jenny says and talk about the strategy and look at the weaknesses and the strengths, because based on experience as a registrar, what we have been put in place, I can say that, and the lessons learned, of course, this is very important. First of all, for the national registrars as Africa, the first one is ownership by the consumers, the users, and the registrars and the companies. That is the first point. As long as we don't have that acceptation, whatever you do, the market will not grow, because it is a problem, an issue that is worldwide. This goes through training, or say empowerment of all those that work in the area of digital issues, that is those that offer solutions to the users, because we need to a professional of computer science, okay, because people don't know, of course, what it is about, but the empowerment of our service providers that will offer hosting.com, because there are international hosting network that offer packages, okay, that would let people think that it is not expensive. Also the issue that it is accessible. The question that I ask companies usually is when they buy a car, a four-wheel car, when they buy, is it a Chinese or a German made? Do they raise the issue of accessibility when they buy cars? There is also a kind of acculturation, which means that people say if we are more expensive, it is because we are maybe worse. We have to change the culture. We may be dearer or more expensive, but also have quality. The third one is confidence. Confidence. Generally, we are not self-confident. We have a culture of externalization. When we want to do something, we want to look at, seek for international expertise. We don't know how to do things. Local expertise is not really promoted. There are many works underway and factors that can help us to say that the most important registrars in Africa have very poor figures. Maybe I wish that in 2 years you may be having access to the 2,000 domains. For us, since 2008, when we started, we improved from say 1,000 to 5,000. 10 years. It is extremely difficult because it is not only the market that is the stake, but all the measures that have to support the issue. For me, what remains to be done? What we have to do, again, you are right. First one, to develop infrastructure. A domain name is just a point towards a content or a service. Today, the majority of those pointers are not referenced appropriately on the name of national domain names. Many services, I'm sorry, but I may just give a direct illustration here in front of me. I can see that ISOCEL has a domain name, .com. Being national, it should be .bg, you see. That is the issue. There is a need to find means to add value to our extension, to be empowered to show that it is the domain name is not a pointer, but we can have a .bg, and the extension is there. It is because we don't have local resellers. In Senegal, we have 15 resellers. We don't have resellers in the regions. Intel should not be limited to the capital, to Cotonou, no, but it has to cover the overall territory. All those stakeholders need a presence, and they have targets that can be identified on the internet. Hence, communication aspect. More than marketing, it should be communication. Communication should be underscored. The registrars have to do communication. I'm not going any further, but I think that those are factors that have to be highlighted. I think that we ourselves have the capacity to offer an addition service, that is confidence with DNS, that is confidence and the transaction chain, that is to master our environment and try to be directly with the national regulation bodies that would know that we comply with the security vision of the system, the sovereignty, digital sovereignty that I talked about. If we do that, we can have interesting, very strong arguments to promote the national extension. I think we have to further work on that and reflect on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex, for those opening remarks. Next, I'm going to turn to Mr. Masilela, representing Africa. Registry Africa is, I believe, will be almost a year old in a few days. What are some of the lessons that you have learned as you try to grow the registry? Are Africans proud of their identity? Or just to use the example that Alex has mentioned, are we still looking beyond the borders? for the beautiful names.
Thank you, Barrack, for the question. First of all, I think in the next few hours on the 4th of July, we are going to be celebrating 1 year of .Africa. This is when .Africa general availability was launched. Incidentally, it happens to be American Independence Day. We deliberately, selected that date because .Africa case has and is still being handled and addressed and debated in the American courts. But when Judge Holmes in 2017 February decided that the delegation of .Africa need not be delayed any further, it needs to be happening forthwith. And we then decided that as a gesture of appreciation, we are going to make sure that in our launch plan, we are going to select dates that are very historic, including the 4th of July being this American holiday, to say thank you, Americans, for making it possible for the African name to be finally delegated and finally being put into use. So today, when we look at the numbers of .Africa, a year later, I think there is quite a bit of joy. Though we had anticipated the numbers to be much bigger than what we have, we think the delays in the courts have created a lot of false starts. People were beginning not to be certain if .Africa will happen. But today we are looking at numbers that are short of 17,000 names. And in the main, we are seeing the registrars that are pushing these 17,000 names, they are outside of the continent. A majority of these registrars are your registrars in Americas and in Europe, with about 2 from South Africa, 1 and 2 in Tunisia, and we think the numbers should be coming from the continent. But it is not the case. And we believe that, as my colleague has correctly pinpointed, that we are still holding on to foreign names that are not necessarily identifiers of our own country and identifiers of our own continent. Because one of the things that we must understand about .Africa as a name, it is of the 55 names that we have on the continent, the CCTLDs, there is .Africa, which makes 56 names on the continent. These are the choices that we have. If we do not want to use .BJ, we have .Africa as an alternative. I believe if we were to think like that as a continent and avoid an alternative being a .com, we are going to be able to grow the names on the continent the way we want to. I need also to state that .Africa as a name is not just a name, it is a project. It's a continental project. It has 4 key deliverables for the continent. 1, it is to assist in the growth of the CCTLDs. We need to work with the .BJs of today. We need to work with the .KE. We need to work with the .TZ to make sure that they grow. 2, it is to facilitate the growth of registrars. We need to be working towards growing registrars on the continent. The 3rd function is to assist on the ICT programs on the continent. The 4th, which is very important, is unless we access content in our own language, it will always be foreign and difficult to access. So the 4th element that the .Africa project looks at is a translation of content into our own languages. We need to be owning the content. It needs to be translated into our own languages so that not only us seated here can enjoy the information, but even our grandmothers and our children can enjoy that information in a language of their own. So I believe that we still have a task of ensuring that we do not forget those 4 paramount deliverables for .Africa, and also to remember that we have 55 plus 1 names, and that is the alternatives. These are the choices that we have. We are spoiled for choices as a continent. If you don't want .KE, there is .ZA, there is .TZ, there is .BJ, there is .BW, and if you don't want all of the above, there is .Africa. And this is what we need to be addressing, Chair. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucky, for those interventions. I would like to state that we'll also have an opportunity for you in the audience to intervene if you have a question or a comment. And I'll request that maybe we have a microphone somewhere here to avoid wasting time passing the mic around as we continue with our panelists. Our next speaker will be Mouhamet Diop, who is the representative of the African Registrar Association. Mouhamet, the registrars are being mentioned adversely as not doing enough. Is this really the case, or do you have a contrary opinion?
Do you want me a short response or
medium?
So Barrack, thank you very much, because you give me flexible time and flexible manner to answer your question. I just want to share some slides for just. Okay, first of all, I just want to highlight, well, anyway. First question, how many people here are only speaking French in the room? Combien de personnes parlent seulement français et ont du mal avec l'anglais? Okay. Okay. How many people understand the French only? Okay. All right. So. I want to share with you some of the slides that we have to have a better understanding of what Jenny was explaining. The most important thing regarding the Jenny experience is they come to an agreement between all the multi-stakeholder parties who are around the domain name business, and it's a huge achievement. This is very important because you cannot do anything in the DNS business if you're alone. This is the first learning session we have. No matter how long it takes to build the things, because I gave you some info previously regarding how long it took for us to build Afrine. 9 years. But be careful. It's not because you have built an institution that it becomes sustainable and safe. No. You have to be very cautious because spoil is much easier. Destroy, costs nothing compared to building something. It can take you 100 years to build stuff and 1 second to destroy everything. So, 2 major learning points here is ARCEP represent the government. They decide that this digital identity, that is the .bg, first is valuable. Second, they make through an open process to find a partner, a technical partner, who show that they have the skills, they can deliver. So they make a tender, they make a selection, and they end up by selecting a partner. This is also a very strong lesson and a very good best practice stuff. But as Alex have said, So this is a very challenging process. It's not only based on dream, it's based on reality. And be prepared for a slow start, because when you want to build an ecosystem of DNS users, of DNS partners, so it will not come overnight. So one of the most important thing is what we need to make this ecosystem in Benin vibrant. I'm going to take Benin case because it's a very interesting one. You are on a process. But all the African countries will learn and share the same lessons we're trying to raise here. So government endorsement is very important, because we have noticed in many African countries, you have government who say, I want to control the DNS, fine, okay. I'm the regulator, I want to regulate, fine, okay, take it. They take it, so 1 week later they come back, they say, can you take it back, because it seems like I did not see what I thought was inside. I thought there was money, there was, people can sleep, but in fact we are not used to be called at midnight saying that the DNS is not working, because the technical people at the regulator are not used to this type of thing. So operating a DNS is a 24 hours availability stuff, so you have to be available. You have to deliver 24 hours a day service. And next, we talk about marketing. And I was very impressed, because it comes out from our discussion on the strategy. Sensitization. How are you going to train people? How are you going to make the domain name valuable to Benin people? Because getting a domain name is one thing, but creating value out of the domain name is another thing, right? Okay. How many people already look at for a land in a country like Benin? You can have your land, and then a land is just a piece of paper. They said you are the owner. But what happens if you don't do anything on the land? If you don't build a house? If you don't set up a commerce? If you don't rent it? What's going to be the value for you? Just declaring that you have a land? Okay. So imagine this one is a worst case scenario. When you earn a land, you don't give money to the land, so you don't feed it. But for the domain name business, it's different. Because every year the guy come back and say, oh, you have the land? Okay, can you pay back? And I say, what I'm doing with this land? I get the land, I have no revenue out of it. And every year Jenny gonna come back and say, $20. So the guy gonna say, are you kidding? I thought that it was a one-time fee. And it's gonna be over. So I have my domain name and it's over. So I earn it for. So Jenny gonna say, but who's gonna pay for my infrastructure? Who's gonna pay to maintain all these things I'm running for you? So you have to pay a bill. So the key thing here is about value. If you don't create value after the domain name, the renewal rate's gonna be very low. You can have a strong campaign, get domain name registered, but the next year, nobody gonna show up. You can have a campaign, have 10,000 domain name at the beginning. In 3 months, wow, it's very interesting. And then, so who put value in the domain name? And if they are not there, how are we gonna enable people to create value on the domain names? That is the key question that you guys have to answer. Who gonna develop the website? Who gonna put emails, configure and make it running for the users? These are the key players. That's what we're talking about. So, but for the government, it's very easy to convince them if you show them how many employees, how many jobs you can create with a domain name. They're gonna follow you. Because the regulator have a measure of money and job creation. For the money, he knows that the money is not there. I know that the business plan that Jenny have presented to the regulator, if he did not get the pressure, from a political top over the regulator, they will not see, how come I spend this time for just a business that is just creating what? Do you get the point? Like the money gathered by the DNS at that point is little compared to what they get when they spend a one-year job on the mobile operator, issue a new license on the mobile telco. So they're talking billions of dollars. Here they are talking what? Imagine the business case that Jenny have present, 12,000 CFA per domain name, 20,000 domain name. Make the calculation. You will see what I'm talking about. It's not money. So the money is not there. The money is where? Is on the value created on top of the domain name. That's what the government is looking for if you want to convince them. If you can show that the schools on IT, on web developer, on coders, the boys that are running these things have opportunity to create jobs, to create companies on innovation and all these things. Yes, this company is going to have real revenue out of it. If you talk about hosting, the data for the information system for company, doing all this stuff, these are money. But the domain name in itself is nothing, it's peanuts. But it is an enabler. If you don't have land, you cannot build a house, you cannot build a building, you cannot build anything. So land is just the baseline, but it's not what is creating the value on that industry. So our message here is we need to formalize and we need to organize and we need to encourage young people to show them that look at the past. The money is there, so follow the past. Join. Be part of it. Because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. It will not benefit the Benin youth. It will not benefit the African youth. Somebody else is going to come, make the money on top of what we are doing. So what we try to challenge here is we need a new way of waking up our youth in order to understand that they have a chance and opportunity to create value for themselves. They get the tools for it. They have been well trained. Education is become like a standard, harmonized worldwide. You can be in Benin and have a strong education on how to deliver. But the local job, going on field, convincing people, working closely with them to create value for them on their business and get part of it, this is what our youth need to learn. And we will not copy anybody. You cannot copy development. You cannot import development model. It has to be local. It has to be based on how smart we are to match between the need of our customer and the tools we have and the technology available. This is what people are expecting from us. And this matching, nobody's going to do it. But if you don't do it, nothing would happen. That's why you get very small numbers. We talk about less than 1% of the content of the internet generated by Africa. Because what? Because we are not working on generating what local people are needed. We're not trying to match how we train our young people to match with the need of our local guys. The baker at the street, the people with the farmer with the small land of doing stuff. I mean, we need to think local. We need to think small. And it is by adding all these forces that we create something that we call development. But everybody think about having a big company, doing a big job, being hired by a telco company. No, it cannot happen. It's not possible. So the business model has to be really revamped and rethink, and that's what we are trying to achieve here. Barrack, I don't know if I'm on the middle between the long and the small, but let me give you the list of the registrar existing now. Our role, can you just come now on the, no, come, previous slide. This is a list of 12 registrars now in Africa. Don't fix yourself on the numbers. It's small, I agree. It's 12 now, okay. So, but what's the most important thing that I just want to share with you guys here is, in 2006, there was no registrar in Africa. All the registrars are outside. Okay, 2006, 2018, it's a long time, fine, but it's okay. But let's catch up. What we need is for the incubators, for the small entrepreneurs, for young people who want to do business like this. You get people who are willing to share with you because you are not competitors. And it's very important. You are not looking young entrepreneurs as competitors. You know why? Competitors is the term that appears when saturation of a market starts being a reality. We did not start. The potential is 100%. We are willing to serve all African people. They don't have people, and that's what Alex was highlighting. They don't see people they have to talk to when they want to deal with domain names. So come and join. You are not competitors, you are partners in a challenging situation where we want to deliver a service that is not present in rural areas in our inner country. So this is what we need to challenge. So it's a common challenge. We are all willing to move together. We are not competitors. We are partners. And that's really the message I want to share with you. And partners have to talk together, have to share strategy, have to define together what is the best way to move. If you don't do that, nothing would happen. We're going to have less than 1% domain name registration worldwide, less than 1% content. Who cares? Nobody. But we care. We are African. We want things to change. Thank you, Barrack.
Thank you very much, Mouhamet, for those interesting comments. Of course.
Merci pour ces commentaires intéressants. Bien sûr, comme le premier qui sort par la porte est le premier à être poignardé. Mais il y a quelque chose de bien pour nous tous dans l'avenir. Tout ce qui...
but as things open up, I believe we will also want to be associated with them. From 2006 to 2018, we have 12 ICANN accredited registrars. But of course, within the countries, I know we do have many resellers and we do have many local registrars. Again, the encouragement is we need to list as many as are also operating in our countries so that the entire continent may know who is out there, who is doing the business for us to move together. I will turn to Mr. Victor CiZA. During the opening remarks, you made very interesting sentiments regarding policy interventions that are necessary to support sustainable growth of the domain name industry. I know if we are looking to governments for partnership, governments are always driven by policy. So as we look towards growing the African domain name industry, what are some of the policy interventions that as stakeholders we need to think about that will help the registries, registrars, registrants, and even our governments to drive this industry forward?
Thank you for giving the floor. The internet ecosystem cannot be managed properly without the intervention of the government. The right decisions to be made by the governments to promote the ICT in general and the internet, DNS, and so on. I think that we started the internet as private pioneers, and it's only very recently that the governments, first of all, understood what the internet is about. I mean, on the African continent, and the number of domains registered is actually a mirror of what is happening in the interests of the decision makers at the governmental level. So the governments, the regulators are very important partners in this business, and they should, each of them should play their role properly. so far the regulators have been a kind of inhibitors. And the intervention of the government are supposed to be kind of mediators. They are not understand what the business is like and what would be the appropriate approach. The multi-stakeholder approach is the best one in my opinion, but for them to understand, we have to have a kind of cultural shift in our concept of power, I mean, in the exercise of the power of the authorities. The government is supposed to facilitate the business, so should be the regulator. So for the internet business, I think that the policy which should be set in place should be the separation of functions which might be conflicting. It's a good example, for instance, for the RCEP, the current regulator, to give away the management of the .bg. It's a good example which might be followed. I think it is equally a good example from KENIC, of the registry from Kenya, which has been delegated the responsibility of managing the CCTLD on behalf of the authority. I think that we should look into the business model which we should sell to the decision makers at the governmental level. I know that there are some discrepancies, like the intervention of my colleague from Senegal might somehow diverge from others, and others from South Africa also might have a variation in the model approach. But we as African communities, we should try to see what would be the best model we could use to promote the business. So the policy-wise, I would think the governments should be open to discussing the appropriate policy models or regulatory approaches to promote the business and to make money. I think that we should, it is very important to underline the sovereign issue of our CCTLDs and Africa. It is very important. And at the end of the day, I think that it will also help us promote the big business if we promote our identities. And we should see how we can kind of find a way of getting compromise between what is conflicting decisions to get the best product. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. You also mentioned something key that I would like to hear the opinion of the audience, after which we'll get a conclusion from the panel. And this is the use of the Universal Access Fund to support development of the domain name industry on our country, on our continent. Most of our countries now have put in place universal access funds with the regulators that is being used very well to make sure that every corners of our country have access to mobile phone coverage. But could we consider using the same fund to see whether our countries can also benefit from the development of the domain name industry? Before I open up to the floor, I see Alex has something to say, but I would request that I hope there's a roving microphone. Immediately Alex is done, quickly raise your hand so that we may figure out the order of having you raise your questions.
Thank you, Barrack. I would just react about some policies issues. Je pense que je vais parler en.
I think that we talked earlier of the role of the state in development of domain name. I think there's a peculiar point that we should bear in mind. Regulators or states are they conscious of the stakes related to the domain name? We are drawing a lot of power between the telecom resources and resources domain names. There are regulators generally understand that it's about managing resources, numbering or norming. So they take it as resources to be treated as passionately as frequencies. Meanwhile, domain names are more of an identity issue rather than frequency issue. So what is rare is IP addresses is not domain names. So I think that behind that we have, and today whether we don't have a domain name development is because indeed this mainstreaming of the domain name dimension as a rare issue problem with from a telecom point of view. There's a shift to be carried out. We're glad we're talking about regulation of electronic communication than telecommunication and communication, but there's more work to be done. States are not conscious of the fact that about what the domain name is. I don't think they have an issue of identity. Today, one of the strategies set up in some countries, and we're talking about that, is to give each citizen of a country an identity, a digital identity, to give the digital identity, just like we have an ID card that could enable him to identify on the internet, just like he identifies himself as a citizen of a country. It's one of the approaches that could be used. But I think there's still a lot of work for you to get in business. The business, what is it? Where is it? It's in the content. Lucky said it. It's the preservation of that, of our identity, preservation of our culture, that will be based on the mapping of resources on our national territory towards our national community. Was the content for each country? What does the Beninese, what do Beninese that are on the internet doing for Beninese? I'll close it here. We need champions, pioneers. We don't have African champions on the internet. What is a champion model that will create a business? I take the case of the United States. We had a champion, Google, a second one, Facebook. Going to China, we have Alibaba, champion. We have Amazon that became a champion. What is a champion in Africa? What type of champion, what type of content, what type of business can we create in Africa for Africa? I think that GSCR has work to do. We need an African champion that should be in the business. But one of the key impediments is our unreadiness to set up electronic payment systems. It's quite difficult to pay from Senegal and acquisition in Benin. Meanwhile, we're in the same safe currency zone. We don't have mechanism to do that. Furthermore, if I talk about buying a domain name in South Africa in Rand, we have to go to the dollars or through euro. Behind that, we have mechanisms that we discuss that we're able to manage an economy that's not national but as a regional economy, an economy at a continental level. We should be able to trade on the continent level without having recourse to the third party.
Thank you. Merci, Alex. Thank you very much. The question is, Who are the champions from Africa? All our teams are back home from Russia. So it means the champions are here in the room.
Where is the champion?
Okay. Yes, I can see the floor is burning. I know Deogracious and Mouhamet would like to talk. But is there anyone in the audience who also wants to talk? Let me see by the raise of hands before Mouhamet intervenes. Right. Please give him the microphone. Then we have Abibu, then we have Dr. Paulos. But I will first of all give the floor to Deogracious and then Mouhamet quickly before our colleague there speaks. When you speak, please introduce yourself. If possible, the organization you work for. But just wait, I'll give you the signal.
Okay.
Please be brief.
Merci. Alors,
I would like to first of all come back to the issue of business. How do we make money? I believe that all panelists here have understood the necessity to create an ecosystem around the domain names. And I really want to lay emphasis on the fact that in Jenny, the model we are deploying will enable the registrars to go beyond what we're offering. That's why as soon as you go to Jenny to buy the domain name, we have a web platform that's automatically available, and hence you have access to professionals. And from that, the registrar takes over and can support you to design this website, because it will be provided on the in its basic platform. They will take over to design the website, fine-tune it to your taste, put whatever you need in it, and also propose to you all hosting, means all the formula for hosting. And today there's a one aspect that's invoked as a community management, and that the registrar can handle. And I think we can make a lot of, I want to let you know that we can make a lot of money in this sector. Other thing that panelists talked about is a transition of local content, and for that you agree with me there's a lot of work to be done. So what we expect from SMEs, SMI that could set up shop in the area. And another thing was what the government could provide. And beyond what has been said here, it is important for the government to motivate startups to develop digital content. This is what seems to be lacking the most in Africa, developing digital content, especially in our local languages, as we said earlier, facilitating communication and awareness on radio, TV channels, ensuring media coverage, supporting the registry in communication, because we are lucky in most countries. There's a Ministry of Digital Economy that's also in charge of communication and digital economy, so it's an avenue that we can explore. It will be also interesting for the ministry or the government to impose government institutions to be on the national dot. It's a really real appeal, and I hope it can be listened to. We are in discussion with the Export Promotion and Investment Promotion Agency that directly registers companies. And I would like to really salute the MD here. He's not present, but some of his representatives in the room. I want to say how much he was available to support the project. In some countries, they may not have that luck. The government could go in that area and push the leaders to support those institutions. And this is what I would like to quickly add. I thank you.
Thank you, Mouhamet.
Je vais peut-être dans le registre de quel rôle le gouvernement peut jouer, ou quel rôle on peut donner à un responsable pour le convaincre. Je vais vous raconter une histoire qui date de 96.
I will tell you a story that dates back 96 on the role of the government. So, to give you an idea of how we convince a leader who was quite concerned with money, I'll tell you a story. In '96, telecom operators had set up internet access points. Everyone knows that here in Benin we had the UNDP that helped. Pierre Danginou is there. Here. And in Dakar, we had a telecom operator, Sonatel, had set up a subsidiary and was doing internet connection registration, and we had to provide information on a list. It was a very cumbersome procedure. When we look at the turnover at the end of the year, it was less than 200 million on this activity because you had to create your sheet, 25,000 subscription, and very few people could do that. How did I ensure to make sure that subscription be cancelled and made free? We set up, we met the board of directors, even the main director, with all the cumbersomeness. At the end of the year, you have less than 200 million francs for the subsidiary, and at that time he doesn't know that internet had generated 5 billion to dial up, 5 billion internet connection to dial up, because common say it provide 200 million. But after, when the person gets connected on internet to use his modem, that is billed directly on the telephone line. I brought out the data of the telephone line with all calls was a number. I summarized all this volume, and that was 5 billion of turnover. And I said, you see, that's with very few users. If you forget about internet, the communication cost, you forget about identification. Anyone can connect as he wants. That could explode, and really exploded. And they stopped the subscriptions. You take your modem, you go to Dakar, you get to the hotel, you connect, and you move to internet, and the modem were digital, and those 5 billion became tens of billions of CFA. If we didn't have data analysis, and MD would not have followed, a board of directors would not be convinced, would not have been convinced. But that's the same thing. If you show them that the turnover of the registered domain 12,000, maybe about 20,000 domain name in 3 years, the board of directors of ASEP will not listen to you, the minister of telecoms will not listen to you, the president, not even mention him. Now, to be convinced, we needed to show them the figures.
If you don't show them the money, they won't follow you. C'est aussi simple que ça. Donc,
it's as simple as that. Even if we want to convince your economy, we had to convince the African Union that the DNS was important. I was lucky to take part in this study about 10 years ago. This triggered something. There's the same thing. Even when given the will, when they read the domain name, there's money. But look at what is behind the domain name. It's enormous. So today, if we want to be convinced on the importance of what we are sitting on, we have to show the value of what we are practicing. The value of Cotonou is not the land price, but the buildings on top. The more you appreciate what is on the land, the more the city will have value. Doneme, Jenny, Alex, all the AFTLD know that the message is for you. Give us the argument that your domain names generate a greater part, a sizable portion of our economy, and the leaders will give you the right importance and put you at the right place. That's the message.
Thank you very much. So we want to hear from our champions. We'll start with him. Please introduce yourself.
But I will talk in French if you...
Good morning, I'm Raoul Echere from the company CiZA. It's a digital services company Today, I'm particularly lucky to have had an announcement that the management of .bj is now handled by a private company, and I saw the announcements. I listened to the announcements here, but issue that's bothering me is, do we have deadlines with respect to the availability of the online purchase as provided for? As the leaders are here, can we be told specifically what is the timeline for the availability? In 3 months, 6 months, when is it going to get to 12,000? Because even yesterday, the day before yesterday, I bought it at 23,000. That's my question. All the rest is congratulations for all I've heard today. I'm marveled, and I hope that soon we'll have more excitement about the DNS business.
I think we will take a number of questions. You can direct your question to any of the panelists, and then they will be answered after that. Yes, Abibu?
Good morning, everyone. Still morning. My name is Abib Rashid Intahigia from .TC Registry in Tanzania. I congratulate all the registrars for the good work they are working despite the challenges in Africa. But being a register operator, I'm very sensitive to names whenever I see them, whether on the billboards, whether on the tile covers or whatever. Now I have identified Afriregister.org. And I thought, I'm not doing marketing for Lucky, but I was expecting to see the Afriregister.Africa. What are the plans for that, Mouhamet?
Okay. Yes, Bob?
Thank you very much. Question, my name is Bob, for the record. I'm asking an online question on behalf of Abdalmonem Galila from Egypt. And the question is directed to .Africa. And is asking, is there a possibility of allowing IDNs at the second level of .Africa? Thank you.
Interesting question. Any other champion out there? Oh, yes, Dr. Paulos.
Paulos Nyirenda from Malawi. I wanted to talk on registrars because I think this is probably the big issue about growing the business. Maybe the background, I recall that the previous ICANN CEO, Fadi, had a target. Before the end of his term in 2016, have 20 ICANN accredited registrars in Africa. He failed. We failed. And the question is why? I think part of the question could be money, but I think that's not the big question. I think the big question is how are we doing on growing registrars in Africa to the level where they can be ICANN accredited. And I think the big problem is training. We have lots of CiZA accredited registrars. Why are they not rising to become ICANN accredited? And everyone screams about money. I don't think it's money. I think it's capacity for the registrars accredited to CiZA. And the issue, my understanding, is about expertise. And one of the things that I worry about is that web-based portals for registrars is not helping us grow the expertise of registrars. And I worry about training for registrars. This is probably a little bit big issue that we have. We don't have adequate capacity growth for registrars on the continent. So maybe we need to revisit how we train our registrars, how the registrars require expertise from the registrars, and maybe the money side can come after we have adequate capacity for growth of our registrars. So training for registrars is an extremely important issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyirenda, for that. Do we have any other person in the audience? Yes, I see a hand raised at the back. Please pass the mic to him.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Maxime Fado. I'm head of division at Move Money within the HSLAT Benin company. As I monitored interventions, I realized that if you want to get to develop or promote the domain names, we need essentially tackle 3 or 4 ambits, notably the issue of confidence, cost, and communication. And also, I also noted in our intervention that if you want governing authorities to get interested in that aspect of this activity, we need the business model to be profitable. And I think I don't have a totally different approach to say the first element. If it's something myself I hear, but today I was able to hear some interventions on what a domain name is, and I'm sure that for a number of SMEs or institutions in Benin that don't even know what it is, for me the first approach, we need to work towards the trust aspect. People need to understand why, what is the interest, and what do we set up as we're doing on the issue of mobile money, financial education. What program do we set up to be able to sensitize, inform, and for stakeholders know indeed what we're talking about as a company if the agreement is signed with APX or Chamber of Commerce? What is the dynamics of the ecosystem setup so that we know systematically that an institution, a company that's created, must necessarily have a local domain name. Second element is the issue of costs. I must confess that I wanted to ask a question to know. I saw JC said 12,500, but how do we ensure? Do we ensure that the service is affordable? When I take my area, when I have to buy money, we talk about the rate of refinance. What is the institution or the ecosystem set up so that the resellers or the intermediaries that we're going to resell to the companies have access at a lower cost? If I understand, I should be really informed, because the SME already has costs. How do we ensure after raising time so that there's a package that's attractive and enable you to say this is important? Let's go ahead. Now, to close it, the issue of communication, I think that it's an element that is of interest to all stakeholders, both the GSM operators that I'm part of. To say, if a program is set up, I think all stakeholders, amongst which the GSM operators can be stakeholders of this communication aspect, because we already have the expertise in the communication approach towards the companies or the mass. Just saying that if the domain names are increasing, we have other services, ancillary services we can sell behind, so no stakeholder will be on the sideline of the progress. This is my submission on all that has been said.
Thank you very much. Thank you for paying attention. I see very good interventions are coming from the floor. Yes, Adiel?
Yes, hi. Adiel Aplogan. I have one question. The domain names are not foods. People don't need them to live. And one aspect that I'm looking at is how do we articulate in a simple way the need for small business in Africa to have a domain name that really identified them. For what? because we can sell thousands of domain names, if people don't see what they would do with it, they will still go and use their Gmail and Yahoo and so on, because it doesn't add any value to their bottom line, to their daily business. I think that is where we are struggling, how we deal with that chicken and eggs question. Because in Africa, unfortunately, small and medium business are the ones who made the majority of the economical ecosystem. So how do we help those people to understand that having their domain name is about their brand? Having their domain name is about how they market themselves as proudly a company for a country, if we take the CCTLD. How do we help them to understand that by having your domain name, you can have DNSSEC, you can have all security, you can buy your certificate, and being able to, ascertain your online transaction. Those small things, I think we do not articulate them enough to create the dynamic. And I will add that that's where sometimes leading by example help through government, through academic institutions. How much are they doing to bring this message and work on it? As soon as it is there, the cost, the issue of cost will be resolved. The issue of confidence will be resolved because people will understand how important it is. So I think that's some aspect of the business that we need to resolve, because we cannot sell domain name for people to just have their domain name for just having it.
Thank you very much, Adiel. I will take one more question, but also I will say that in the presentations that are coming, we are going to hear cases from around Africa, how registries are working with governments to make sure that companies register their domain names as businesses are registering their names. But most importantly, key issues of value are being raised. Key issues concerning training are being raised, which again I do hope we will tackle in the sessions that are to come, because we are also going to discuss our capacity building needs. So yes, sir, please introduce yourself and then make your question brief. You are standing between us and lunch.
Okay, thank you. I'll speak in French, if you mind. Alors, je m'appelle Bogas Orin Joyum, je suis...
Bogas, I am the Director of Publication of TAC Manga, specialized on ICT and digital issues in Africa. It is an input, but also a small question. We raised the information aspect, having a domain name with the national domain. It is important for companies to have a reference. We have to say that if a company is present on the web with a national domain name, there are strong chances that among research results that are on research motors, if somebody is looking for a hotel or a restaurant in Cotonou, and if that company has a domain name .bg, chances are that through the first result research in Google or Yahoo, there will be the first company maybe to be visited, and this may bring them customers. That is the information that we have to provide to companies to encourage them to have that or those domain names, and that should be based on communication, on specialized media, the government, and all those people that have a responsibility in that level should further communicate and explain to companies that there are possibilities. The second thing that I would like to underscore is the issue of cost for the domain name. Just a short story with Gabon. You know, Gabon is a country that used to put .ga about 5,000 CFA for acquisition, and for several years there were about some tens of thousands of Gabon citizens that supported that and bought it, but they understood that the population and the companies were reluctant to pay 5,000. I heard somebody saying that they want to put it 12.50. Somebody said they will sell at 23,000. I think it is too costly. I think that for the first year, the domain names cost should be free of charge, and that is what Gabon has done now. Now they have more than 500,000 domain names. GA. The strategy is simple. You give the domain name free of charge for the first year, and the second year, from the second year, people start paying 5,000 or 7,000. It is a possibility. It is a good strategy. Do the new counter the new companies in charge of .bg explore that possibility to make available the .bg to 5,000 companies or 5 SME of Benin for the first year, and from the second year, once a year, you start using the domain name for your business. It will be difficult for an entrepreneur to lose, his professional email address, because he will not be unable to pay 12,000 CFA once the domain name, professional name is paid. Even if you ask them to pay the domain name 15,000, I think he will, or they would be able to buy one. I think that the experience of Gabon has to be explored, and many African countries will really find it useful.
Okay, so I will take the last question from Vitus, and then the panel is going to respond as they make their closing remarks. So Vitus, please be brief.
Hello. Okay, my name is Vitus from Ghana, specifically from Ghana.com, a registrar. Okay. I think just to continue from where Adele stopped, after all the, conversation of educating people on why they need to have a domain, I think one of the things we forget to add is where can they get it? Okay, so you may educate them, you may let them know the essence of it, and then you don't add the last bit of where they can get it from. And then you leave them, they go to Google, where they are supposed to do their final search. They go there to do a search, then your name don't come up, okay? And then they rather see the GoDaddies and the rest. So what it means is that we ourselves, we need to work on our brand and be visible. Until we are visible and known to them, we will continue to be lacking behind. And then probably, just to add the last bit, of capacity building in terms of business strategies, which I think has to be at the highest level. Okay, if that also is added, I think it will help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vitus. I see a question, a hand waving. I am tempted to give him an opportunity. Please be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm from Thierry Amusubul from United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Addis Ababa. I just want to summarize, it's not just to get a question, because more and more there's a need to move out from the technical jargon and try to demonstrate, getting a kind of summary of what people has raised, is that the need is to prove how the domain name constitute what I would call a contribute to the economic performance of the member of the country. je vais le dire, c'est-à-dire que concrètement, ce que nous devons dire.
Let me say concretely that we have to communicate here how the domain names are a factor, a drive for economic growth of our countries. What is the value addition? I think we have to shift from the technical vocabulary, okay, to go technically and communicate very simply. What do we contribute to individual level, to SME, or to the country as a whole? That is how we reassure the decision makers, that is businessman, entrepreneur, that identifying oneself through a domain name would bring an added value.
And let's see how this contributes to the economic performance of the country. Because we are moving to the fourth revolution, industrial revolution. We are talking about Internet of Things. We are talking about all these things. Behind that, we need to know that we have domain name that is well secure, domain name that has started contributing to the economic performance of the country, and so on. I think the media people should come on board here and help you to communicate, send this message out all the time. While the technicians are working, we need to convey this message and ensure that that will raise your profile. Because if you state at the technical jargon, people will not say, these people are technicians, they are talking about things that we don't understand. But let's communicate better. I think people raise it, but I think I'm just summarizing what I hear from it. Thank you, sir.
Very good summary. I think, allow me to move to the panel here. Please, we'll continue in the afternoon. I will start with Lucky. Please respond to any issues that may have been raised your way as you give your closing remarks as well.
Thank you, Chair. I think what is very important to take here is starting on the issue of digital presence versus digital identity. It is essential to understand that to be present in the digital space means that you are there occupying something that is being provided by a third party to yourself, and you have no control of that content. When there is digital identity, it is now that you exist in that space. You have your name, you have your own identifier. That is the significant difference. And once you have your own digital identifier, you have control on what you can do with your domain name. You can build your content, you can build your web page. We can find you and your family 10 and 15 years from now. If you build your content as a digital presence, when somebody decides to take down your web page, you have no control over it. We are not going to find you again in that space. That is your present. But when you have your own identity and you build your own space, you are controlling that space and will forever find you in that space. It is critical then, therefore, that we understand that a domain name in your own name from your own country or from Africa will achieve that digital identifier for yourself. You'll be identified. There is another issue that has been raised about price. I must state that in the last few years, and finally yesterday at the AM Africa strategy session, we identified two things that need to be addressed across the continent. And one of those is the issue of domain pricing. We felt that the domain names across the continent are a little bit expensive and unaffordable. And a decision was made that we are going to make it our problem to drive prices down, make domain names affordable. We have a huge disparity in prices. We have one country that charges a domain name at $3 and then another country at $250. It is untenable. We need to address these things, all of us jointly. Lastly, what are the growth factors for domain names? It's price, it's security, its availability, and a resilient system. And finally, we need you to be the drivers of that product, because if you citizens do not use that name, we'll never grow our namespace. Definitely not. We need to have you to trust in our namespace and to grow that. Africa is alive. On the IDN issue, policies are being put in place, and we should be working very strong on making sure that IDNs on the Africa space are available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Responding to Thierry's concern about the economic value of the domain name, I think it might be obvious to him. I think that what is missing is communication and awareness campaigns. But the domain name business is not only profitable economically, but it is socially profitable as well, and culturally speaking. I think we have to address this also at some other forum, because it has an impact on the several issues like the governance, like the sovereign issues, and the independence, and the integration. I think that having a name in the digital identity for every country to make it a priority. For instance, in the .Africa namespace, it is going to make very important difference in terms of African integration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. Alex?
Merci.
Thank you very much. Let me come back to the notion of price, the price or the cost of the domain. Domain name, it was free, but up to $350 in some countries. That is the operational cost that should not be hidden. There is nothing free of charge in this world. It is not possible. It does not serve the development of the domain name. Let me react on the example that you gave. Of course, Gabon and other countries increased the domain name artificially by using their sovereignty. It is not an example to follow. Not saying more than that, but those who know this sector know what I'm talking about. Having artificially 500 domain names, but now the GA domain name have now become names that are free of charge. Anybody can take those names free of charge and can do whatever they want with that. It is an issue of sovereignty. I'm not going to further talk about that, but we may talk about that. I'm not going to name countries. It is an issue that AFTLD is working on. There are countries that have now lost sovereignty on the domain name, and we are fighting so that they have sovereignty and that the space name is to be taken seriously. There is nothing free of charge. But if there are internal mechanisms in countries, for example, we contemplate one thing, and in Senegal we raise this issue. The issue is that the state will take into account operational cost, okay, for domain names related to the development of a company. It is a good thing. The operator would recover the operational charges, and the state may cover that, but the operator will not say there is no operational cost. We have to make things relative. Now, there should be policies of really facilitating some sectors. I think it is a good vision that we can try to contemplate, but we will not lose our sovereignty anyway.
Thank you.
We will talk further about that if you want.
During lunch, as Bob says, even in Freetown, bananas cost money. Isn't it? So we'll hear from Deo Gracious.
Ok, merci. J'aimerais revenir sur la première question qui a été posée, notamment la question.
Come back to the issue that was raised, that is the deadline for the establishment or the covering of training by .bg. In the process of delegation, as I presented earlier, there are many stakeholders. You have ICANN, you have RCEP, which is the intermediary between the former registrar and the new one, and that is responsible for the administrative management of .bg. Announcing a date, a deadline here would be a very difficult exercise because there are administrative deadlines that we have to take into account. What is sure and clear is that we all want to move forward very quickly, and the authorities are really, they want that this has to be done very quickly. So say in 2 months' time, we may start the full operation. I'm saying this and with reserve because there are many parameters that we have to take into account. Now, on the issue of gratuity, saying that, talking about free of charge, there was already an answer to our friend, but I would just like to tell you that making this free of charge even for the first year would not be the solution. Somebody has to pay the bill. But the first thing. The second thing is that for the current register, for your information, you know, there are people who had already acquired the domain name and paid for that, but for the following years they did not react at all. What do we do? Do we deinstall them, deactivate them? People have already paid the first year. What do we do? Do you keep them in your database? In general, all that is free of charge in Africa has never been successful. The last thing that I would like to say as regards this is that we have to be careful about speculation. There is no license on the domain names. We had, when they created Sobies company, Sobies.com, when .bg was launched, they were not interested and somebody reserved in his stead. But now when they had to rebuy Sobies.bg, somebody came up and challenged to buy 5 million. You see, we have to really raise awareness on all this so that people should realize that they have to very quickly reserve or book the domain name, and so when the time comes, they can really enjoy it. Thank you.
Mouhamet?
I think that this first session focused on the registrars, and we have underscored the models, even if African market or the market of Africa is still at the beginning. A nascent market is going its way. We have underscored the conditions to foster development by ensuring that this has to be in a controlled environment. The issues of environment have been raised. Many other issues have been raised, but there are two issues that I would like to bring back. It is the power law. We cannot develop a good CCTLD and good models of GTLD if local expertise is not very well developed between the registrars and the resellers. You can be convinced. Just give me the number of training organized by the CCLD for registrars can count for countries. It is poor. Make the calculation and you will realize why I'm talking about this. The challenge of technical training should not be overshadowed. If today we have very good network, telecom networks, and others that are working well, it is because at the beginning people under Scott training. AFNOC has trained thousands of technicians that have worked with the FIA exchange points since ISOP 1995 and so on and so forth. And this had to help a very strong expertise level in that area. We did not have the same opportunity as part of the development of the activities of the CCLD and the registrars. Today, the challenge is who is ready. And this is the opportunity to talk about all this. Who is now going to be responsible for the technical training of the registrar, the CIZAs, the resellers to be at the level of required standards, so that when an African comes in to take a domain name, that they are not going to do with a jack of all trades, but of professionals that can ensure equivalent or above services above, instead of dealing with an American or European company. That is the challenge. We may have a number, but number or figure is nothing if it is for speculation or will not give economic impact. Challenge is training. Powerless. We have not reached the 20 registrars, even if it is an objective that is valid everywhere in Africa. We have not yet achieved the objective of development of this continent, and of course, the names of the men are a case. We wanted to have 20, we have 12, we are above 50%. We can do better, and so the objective is not even 20, not 50, not 100, but tens of hundreds in the future. But still, you don't need to rush. If you want to go, you have to go together. It serves nothing that somebody or some people will be going and the continent would be lagging behind. It is a global issue. Training is the bedrock, the backbone. If we don't have the technical expertise, we cannot deliver. Thank you.
That has been a very interesting panel. And I welcome you to the afternoon session, which I can guarantee will be more interesting. So in closing, some of the key things that I have picked from the interventions, both from the panel and on the floor, is the need for good governance. That is, we need clear separation of responsibilities between our governments and operators. We don't want scenarios where the referee is also the player. So this has come out as one of the factors that can promote a sustainable DNS industry on the continent. We've also heard that there is need for capacity building. That is, we need to equip our registrars, and we need to raise the visibility of local registrars as well, and make sure that they are able to play or rather deliver services just as the ICANN accredited registrars. There's also been a mention for the need for branding. We need to make sure that we present our businesses very well, or we market them very well. Communication has also been highlighted. I like the intervention from the speaker that we can no longer hide behind technical words or jargon. We need to use language that the common man can be able to understand. We also need to bring on board journalists and media people so that they can help us to advance this, knowledge about the domain name industry. And finally, as Lucky said, we need local champions. So we need our Sadio Manes, we need our Mo Salahs that will help to promote the DNS industry in the African continent. And with that, I want to request you to applaud the panel. Please give them a round of applause. And one more for yourselves for paying attention. Thank you very much. It's lunchtime. Let's be back in the room by 2:30. No siesta today. Bon appétit.
S'il vous plaît, pour le déjeuner, c'est juste...
lunch